I think this is a huge topic. How do you date in recovery? Like, how do you even talk about that you're a person in recovery, right? How do you
And
and
so to be able to say that for the first time, literally in my adult life, maybe since I was 18 or 19, that I am debt free. We're talking student loans. We're talking everything. I'm about to wipe all that shit clean. So
But here's the thing, and this is a really hard lesson that I learned early on. I can't want somebody's recovery more for them than they want for themselves. I
of
open?
course,
Is that what we just said?
yeah, why not?
All
What's up,
right.
everybody?
That's always weird when you got two podcasters doing an episode because we're like, wait, who's talking?
Yeah.
Because normally we're used to taking charge of the episode.
Mhm.
But yeah. So hi, Adam.
Hi, welcome to our Modern Meeting Broke Girl Society joint end of year. Looking forward to next year extravaganza. That's what we're
Yeah,
calling it, right? Something like that.
exactly. We're joint collab here because in this space it's all about collaboration and not
Amen.
competition. So
Absolutely.
there's not enough podcasts out there talking about this. So plus we're friends and we work together. So
Yeah.
this felt like a natural fit.
Absolutely. And this won't be the last time you guys hear from us collectively.
No, because we have a new project coming out.
Yeah,
We
we
can't.
do.
Oh wait, can we talk about it? We can't
Can
talk
we?
about it, can
I
we?
don't know if we can.
Mm. You know what? Just
Evive
why?
live.
I was gonna say, you know what? Why don't you guys just keep checking in on us, and maybe you'll find out. But Adam
Hmm.
already spilled the beans. Yeah. So we both work for Evive. Plug for Evive. Which is an amazing app that helps you better understand your relationship around gambling. If you've listened to my podcast, you hear me say this every time. Um, but yeah, we are teaming up and doing a podcast for Evive.
Yeah, Evive live. It's going to be really awesome. Christina is the, you know, well-spoken, has a good rapport with the experts, and I'm the guy who asks the follow-ups where it's like, "Okay, explain to me like I'm 5 years old if," but no, we have, like, 4 episodes in the can, we got a few more in the pipeline, and it's gonna be really good. We're kinda leaning into the, getting the expert opinion and looking at, like, the science end of it, sprinkling in some lived experience and, hearing our stories a little bit, but yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Really excited for it.
Yeah, so it's a little different because we're talking to the experts and we're asking them kind of the questions about gambling disorder and treatment options and things like that. So it'll be fun. But anyway, that's not what we're here for today, Adam. We're here to answer some questions and just give everybody an end of the year episode that hopefully they can feel hopeful and move into the new year with maybe some inspiration and some goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's put a bow on 2025. Can you believe it's about to be 2026?
This year has felt like the longest year for me. I thought that first year of recovery was sliding by so slow because I remember in that first year of my recovery, I was just like, I just want to make it a year. I just want to
Yeah.
make it a year. And it felt so far away. And now I'm almost 5 years in recovery. And I can say that because I feel really confident, but I still
Hell
do
yeah.
take it one day at a time. But, I'm closing in on that 5 year mark in March, early March. And um, yeah, like I feel like after that first year, time flew until this year. It was just a very, very long year for me.
Yeah, see, it's honestly the opposite for me. Like, I feel like my first year kind of flew, or no, my first year was kind of slow. And now I feel like I was just celebrating 2 years. And now, February 8th, it'll be 4 years for me. And I feel like this year went by so fast. Like, I feel like it was just the summer and now it's January. So I don't know. Yeah, I think, just I've been really busy as I say that talking to the busiest woman on the planet. But yeah, I'm surprised that because you've been so busy that it didn't go by faster for you because it flew by for me, and I'm only doing half the work you've been doing.
I don't, yeah, I don't know. It just felt like I traveled a lot this year,
Yeah.
more than I've ever traveled in my life. And we'll kind of get into that in some of the questions. But I had a lot of health issues kind of mixed in with that. I had a lot of loss this year. So it was just maybe it's not so much that it was a slow year, it was just a heavy year for me.
Mm.
Lots of wonderful, amazing opportunities mixed in with lots of, bits of struggle, but that's just life.
For
right?
sure.
And I'm just grateful to my recovery that helped me navigate all the ups and downs this year. So
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward to 2026, looking to slow down a little bit, but I also have a lot of stuff going on for next year as well.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
excited. Do you want to
definitely.
just jump into some questions?
Yeah, so I think, a good place to start, let's start on a positive note. What was your biggest personal win in recovery this year? Something that, you would have thought was impossible a few years ago.
Well, I'm gonna lean into the travel.
Yeah.
The amount of travel that I did this year, but I went to some really amazing places and got to experience some really amazing things. And that's all to my recovery. When before I entered recovery, like I didn't travel much. I'd been to a few places, taken a few vacations, but because of the financial harm that I caused myself, because of just the struggle itself, like my world felt very small before recovery. It felt very like everything was in this box and this is just how it had to be. And then recovery and the work that I've done in the Broke Girl Society changed that for me. It
Mm,
blew that lid off of the box. And, every year I was traveling more and more and I was doing a lot of speaking about women in gambling. And this year, though, I mean, it took me to Honduras, took me to the Philippines, took me to Canada. I'd never even been to Canada. Took me to 26 different conferences across the US. So it was quite a bit of travel, but I also started, my job with Evive. It actually started last year, but it grew to a bigger capacity this year.
mm,
I started working for the Oklahoma Association for Problem Gambling and Gaming, which was really a goal of mine from when I first entered recovery. I wanted to help people in my community and in my state who are struggling with gambling. So lots of big bigs. Had a really fantastic year with my partner Dustin. We got to experience. He went on a lot of those trips with me, and he got to knock something off his bucket list, which was swimming with the
don't say
well sharks.
sharks.
Well
Oh my
sharks.
god. Oh my
Well
god.
sharks.
Dustin, what are you doing, Dustin?
Oh, they're gentle giants. They're gentle. I
Okay.
was down there too.
Oh
Um,
my god.
So yeah, lots of good. But I had some loss. I lost my father this year in
Mm,
early. We weren't close, but it was still something that impacted me. A lot of processing, and I think it's always tough when you lose somebody who you don't have a relationship with, and you're always wondering why you don't have a relationship with them. And so when they're gone, I think all the woulda, coulda, shoulda starts to really set heavy. And so there's a lot of processing around that, a lot of trying to figure that out. So that was a really kind of tough time for me.
yeah.
So and then just a lot of like medical things
Mm.
related. Perimenopause kicked my ass. I know you were just like, I wonder if we're going to go this episode without her saying anything about hormones. We're
Oh, of
not.
course not. Of course not.
So yeah, it kicked my butt. It gave me frozen shoulder. It's just really made my brain freeze. So it's been challenging, but also fantastic. So
I
that
don't
was
know
a
if I wanna
really
go
long
down
way.
this I don't know if I wanna go down this rabbit hole, but what is frozen shoulder?
Frozen shoulder happens oftentimes with women in perimenopause. It freezes up, and there's probably medical people listening to this, nurses who can probably say this way better than me.
Mm,
But my shoulder froze up right before the Honduras trip. Um, my shoulder froze up to where I couldn't lift it. I couldn't lift it, over like halfway. And it's something to do with like the hormones and your joints and inflammation and all of that. And so it took me, I think, 4 months to get it to unfreeze.
mm.
And that was through going to an orthopedic specialist. And he was like, "How old are you?" And I was like, 47, and might have been 46 then. And he was like, "And you have diabetes?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I know what this is." I'm like, "Okay,
You
frozen
got the
shoulder."
frozen shoulder.
I'm like, "Well, Google told me that 2 months ago." So anyway, yeah, so it's just it takes injections and physical
Yeah.
therapy, and it finally thaws out. And it's really
Okay.
interesting because it goes like it freezes and then it goes through like these phases and then it thaws. And then all of a sudden you're like, what was that?
That's so interesting. Um, no, it is though, it is. Um, yeah, I mean, as far as my wins, the first one that pops in my head because it just happened so recently, you know, I asked you, what were some things that you thought a few years ago you could never imagine? Like
Mhm.
when I sat down with my father a month into my recovery in March of 2022, and we did essentially a pressure relief group meeting. And then a month later in April, when I faced the music of my 2 years worth of taxes that I didn't pay.
Mhm.
And when the dust settled and we set up all the plans and, it was like something along the lines of like 30 grand that I owed the government and a couple different states and, a couple other, a bunch of credit cards. And, in the next few days, I will be debt free, which is that's the biggest win for me of this year is, because it was supposed to take me, we mapped it out and it's supposed to take me like 6 or 7 years. But, threw in the extra payments when I could and, just, and was fortunate enough to, get a great job with Evive, which is coming to be my next win. But yeah, just that that feeling of accomplishment, like that long-term accomplishment, like, you know, in my 20 years of gambling, like how often did I do anything where I felt like I accomplished something? And so to be able to say that for the first time, literally in my adult life, maybe since I was 18 or 19, that I am debt free. We're talking student loans, we're talking everything. I'm about to wipe all that shit clean. So it's just, so thankful, so grateful. And that's my biggest win. I'd say my other couple wins, I said when I first met you, going on right around close to a year. I think I met you like in late winter last year. But I said I want to work in the space, and I now work in the space.
Mhm.
Working for Revive and doing the podcast, and that's a huge win for me. And then I think the third one I would say is just the podcast and kinda like how it's slowly but surely growing and just, getting to the point where I'm like, if you told me 9 months ago, like, "Hey, you're gonna be doing a end of the year podcast with Christina Cook, Broke Girl Society," I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, I'm just trying to get her to answer my email." So, this is, yeah, like, it's been a good year. It really has. I mean, there's some things, other parts of my life, that I think I fell short of, but there's a lot of wins this year, a lot of wins, and I'm looking forward to, stacking up more wins in 2026. Once
Yeah.
again, cannot believe it's about to be 2026.
I love it. And I think it again, that's just life, right? We're not gonna
Yeah,
like it's balancing out, right? It's recognizing all the things we did accomplish and looking at the things that maybe we didn't quite get there with, but knowing that we can pull those and just keep going, reaching those goals.
yeah,
And I think for me, and we kind of talked a little bit about this before we hit record, but um we were talking about New Year's resolutions, right? Because
mm,
we're right here. Like this is coming out on I
yep,
think December 30th. So
yeah,
um we're right here at the end of the year. And I just did a one of our Sunday morning meetings, we were kind of talking about this, about transitioning the thoughts around New Year's resolutions into making them actually work. And for me, I don't know that I was ever somebody that really focused on New Year's resolutions, but I remember setting goals, especially when or resolutions when I was in early recovery. And even right before that. And it's like if I didn't meet those resolutions, like I don't know how many times I went into the gym on January 1st or somewhere like that, or maybe even right before. I paid the membership for the year, probably off of a gambling win or something, and never went back.
yeah,
And I will say that I didn't just do that once. I did that a few times, and then I would like, well, I'm gonna do it monthly. So then maybe if I'm paying it monthly, it will remind me that this is something I'm doing. No, that didn't work. Um, and so I just remember the disappointment in myself each and every time. Or I would set some type of New Year's intent of like, I'm gonna be better with my finances, right? But I'm still in the midst of addiction. So that's not gonna make any sense. But to me it did in those moments. And I never managed to do it, and so it just added this whole other layer of disappointment and shame to me, and so it wasn't until I was in recovery and even I mean, I even struggled with it in early recovery, setting these goals that I couldn't meet. They were because they were too big of goals, and I put too short of a timeline on 'em, and so I just remember kinda still feeling that same disappointment of, like, I'm never gonna be able to do anything right? And, each time I hit a milestone, it just gave me a little bit more confidence. And so I think it was right around that first year of recovery that I was like, let me look at something different when it came to setting goals and intentions for the new year. And that's when I really kind of learned how to break down my goals in ways like I really kind of came to this understanding that what I was doing before was just setting goals that were just too big, and I wasn't they were too big for me to meet in the version that I was in that moment. And so I started to really break them down to like small goals, right? What's a small goal? And that for me was just a small goal. I'm not going to gamble today, and I'm going to focus on that. A small goal, I'm going to start the dishwasher every night before bed. Small goal, I'm going to try and make my bed every day. These things that are just they're doable. They're very, very doable. And it's like the more that I set these small goals and the more that I made it through the day and met those goals, the more momentum I built. And so then I would make medium goals. Well, what's a medium goal? I want to get to 30 days of no gambling. And my daily goals, my small goals got me to that medium goal, right? Doing something every day for my recovery was another goal that I had. And I just incorporated that in. And then I would look at my long-term goals. I wanna pay off this credit card. I wanna do this big goal. I want to have a year of recovery. And so by breaking those goals down, I made them more manageable, more obtainable. And then each time I met a goal, I just built that momentum that got me to the next goal, to the next goal. But I had kind of this medium goals that sometimes takes weeks or months to get. Then I broke it down into large goals, which sometimes takes years to get, right? And so whether it was paying off debts, or just whatever those goals look like, and that changed the way that I looked at New Year's resolutions, and so I don't do resolutions. I do goals and I break them down, and so all the ones that I did this year, I was able to do, and I felt great for that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I think of like, I was obviously the king of being in the gym January 1st and or making ridiculous declarations of like, no more social media or all these things that just weren't attainable. And then, when I got into recovery, I found myself still making unrealistic goals for myself. And I think part of the reason for that is that if I can stop gambling, like I've already proven I can do this thing that was, you know, a problem for 20 years. Like, how hard is it going to be to go to the gym 4 times a week? Or how hard is it going to be to lower the amount of time that I'm on my phone? Well, I figured out that it's pretty hard because guess what? Like all the things that, you know, make up me, which was the gambler, they're all still here, and now, I starve them, but now they're finding other ways and they're finding other things. So like, yeah, for me, I don't know what here's what I do know. And um, I figured this out recently because, in a couple weeks, actually a week from today, I'm gonna be, in New York City doing a podcast. It's gonna be filmed, and, for the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks since I signed on to do it, I keep telling myself like, "All right, gotta get to the gym." Like, you don't like the way you look right now on camera, so you gotta like drop. And what do? I just like I keep putting it off. I keep putting it off, and then I literally said to myself this morning, like, "All right, you gotta like starve yourself for the next 6 days. Like, try to." And it's like, I, when I say it, I'm like, "Bro, it's too late now. It is what it is." But instead of like having this thing on the calendar, right? Which whether it's a wedding, which I do have a wedding coming up. Whether it's a wedding or something important, I would wait till the last minute and then try to do something drastic. And then the minute that thing's over, um, I'm getting a steak dinner and three desserts and then so it's just like my gambling. Like, how about just trying the best you can over the course of a year,
Yeah.
right? And let things happen organically, right? Like, hey, you had a rough month. You only went to the gym 3 or 4 times. Okay, try to do better next month. Instead of going into this like hole, and I say like, just like I do with my gambling, I'm like, all right, this is it, last hurrah. I'm gonna go nuts, and then I'm gonna quit. I do the same thing with food. I do the same thing with going out and drinking or going out and spending too much money. I say, okay, I'm back on the thing starting Monday. And I can remember having a similar conversation at the end of last year with Alex on the modern meeting where we had this same conversation. Like, let's just, set realistic goals, right? Um, no big resolutions. And, I definitely failed when it came to my health. You know what I mean? Uh, and guess what? Newsflash, when your physical health is down, I find that my mental health starts to
Yeah.
suffer, right? Like I have more anxiety. I have I don't sleep as well. So like these are things that like once again, I'm not even gonna make any goals for myself. I'm just gonna try to avoid the super highs and the super lows, right? Like I am not gonna go on a juice cleanse, but I'm also not gonna hopefully, gorge and order Domino's, every day. So
Yeah.
I got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? And I think, like you said, once you get that ball rolling, that's when I can like just kind of get into a groove after 30 days, like it becomes so much easier. And then, instead of looking for reasons or events where I'm like, "Ah, I did it. Like, I fit into that tux. I look great now. Now let's go nuts." What does that sound like, right? Like, that's the addict in me. That's the gambler in me. So, yeah, I'm just trying to, my word for 2026, I haven't figured out. You're gonna help me with it, but something to do with just even keel. We gotta figure out a word for that,
Consistency.
but yeah, yeah, maybe.
Consistency, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
just being consistent with what you wanna do. You know what I mean? So if you say, "I wanna go to the gym every day," let's be consistent. Let's go to the
yeah,
gym every day.
yeah.
But I think or whatever, if you make that goal of 3 times a week, but make sure it's a doable goal, right? I think that
Mm,
that's a problem, and we're right here at the first of the year where everybody's like, "I'm gonna get healthy this year." I've been there, and I've done it, and really the last 2 years, I have been so consistent with my gym workout. I said it I go at a certain time in the morning, and even when I took on my job with Evive, I negotiated. I'm like, "This is the time that works best for me to go to the gym, and I'm happy to work more, but it's gonna look like this." And with my health kind of going up and down, and I know this is probably like I haven't done a lot of video podcasts in the last few months, but I had a skin cancer removal surgery on my face, and it I couldn't go to the gym as part of the healing, and it really has impacted my mental health. But
mm.
one so I understand what you're saying with that, and I've also gained like 9 pounds because I've been on steroids, and like I was also in an old UC flare. So it's like I get that part of it, but I think what was really helpful for me is like just breaking down that goal and being like, I want to be a healthier version of me. And I, I struggle with that too because the part of the project that I did on Honduras is going to be on screen and people are going to be able to see me. And I'm just like, I'm so hard on my body, but I'm also 47 and, I have all these other things going on. So I'm finding that I'm leaning more into the grace side of it of like, this is just me. And
For sure.
I'm doing everything I can. I'm trying to eat as as good as I can, and I'm trying to focus on a 3 to 4 time a week goal with the gym. Um, and that I just kind of changed that mindset around trying to be this skinny version of me and just focus on just a healthier version of me. I want to be able to get up off of my chair and not be like, "Oh," because my hips are tight and
Right,
all of
right.
those kinds of things. So for me, I think you're right. You have it right of like, let me just try and do this a little bit every year. Look at it like your own recovery, right? Your own recovery. Every
Exactly.
day you focus on, I'm not going to gamble today, right? That's
Well,
my
and
goal
that's
for
the
today. And you can say it as far as your gym, or I just want to move my body today, whether it's in the gym, whether it's going for a walk, whatever that needs to look like.
yeah.
Just set a small intention for the day, but put it in a way that you can fit it in, right? Whether you have to
Mm,
put a calendar block or something that allows, like, this is dedicated time.
yeah. Well, and that was gonna be another thing too, is that I need to manage my time better, and I need to look in the mirror and realize that, "Listen, buddy, if you took all the hours in the day where you're either staring at a TV screen or your phone, you got plenty of time to do everything you need to do."
Yeah.
Right? And so that's something where I really, because, like you said, with the gambling, it's like, I was a well-oiled machine. You can make an argument I still am as far as just staying away from a bet and just doing recovery, but we're teetering. I talk to the people, that I do peer support with about the difference between, abstinence and recovery. Like, I got to be honest. Like, I'm teetering on. I'm just kind of staying away from a bet right now. I'm really not. I'm not. I'm not evolving as much as I should be. Financially had a great year, but all these other things. These are things. This is part of my recovery. And so it's because guess what? Also, you know, financially I'm great. Okay, if I continue down this road and the physical health and the mental health continue to deteriorate, that to me sounds like an opportunity for the disease
Yeah.
to start swinging at me again. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And we can't let that happen, obviously. You
Exactly.
know. Um. So when it comes to like the podcast, um, talk a little bit about because obviously BGS is just becoming this. I mean, you're literally forget about, like, the voice with women, like, you're kind of the voice right now, like, Hatch is, like, in semi-retirement, so, like, you're kind of the number 1 on the call sheet as far as I'm concerned when it comes to, recovery. So, talk about how, um, the podcast and just the BGS in general, like, how did it evolve over the year this year? And kinda give us a little, kinda like state of the union of the BGS.
Yeah. And that's kind of another kind of interesting angle too. Like the BGS, the Broke Girl Society, started from this point of there's no women in the space that are talking. Like there's so many women out there who are doing amazing things. They're hosting meetings and they're on call with people who are struggling, right? There's so many women out there who are doing amazing service in the community and helping. But I couldn't find them, right? Because in my community, there wasn't those women who were showing up to the meetings and things like that. And when I would go to look, I was listening to the Hatches podcast, I was listening to Jamie's podcast, and they were so male dominated. Their guests were male. Like there'd be women on there occasionally, but most of the time they were on the other side of things, like working um in the resources and things like that. But I do remember that Hatch had this 6 episode series called Gambling Got the Girls. And I loved it. And it was with Tiffany and Danielle, and Tiffany isn't here anymore. I think about her a lot. Um, but I just remember how impactful that was and how grateful I was to find it. And so, I'd already started thinking about doing stuff on social media. I was already doing stuff on social media, just sharing my story, and I was getting a lot of women reaching out to me who were like, "Yeah, I'm struggling with this too." And so that started the whole BGS, the Broke Girl Society podcast, and then I created the support group to go with it, and it just grew. Like, it just grew. The more I haven't really even advertised it on the podcast that much. Like, people will find the group and be like, "Oh, there's a podcast." Or people will find the podcast and they'll be like, "Oh, is there a group?" And so it's like I need to probably do better about that. Um, but so this thing has just grown and grown and grown. And this year in particular, it's just like I feel like I'm not needed as much in the Broke Girl Society. And I say this because it has become its own system.
Yeah.
Like, I have so many moderators who are just amazing, right? I have a lot of moderators because I knew, like, in particular this year, I was traveling quite a bit so I couldn't be like reading every single post and even though I think I have read 98% of the post in the BGS, sometimes one gets by you, but just because we have so many each day. Um, but it was really important to me to make sure that somebody was showing up um, that represented the BGS, whether it was moderator or myself. But now it's like the way these women show up for each other, I just, I couldn't be more proud. I couldn't be more proud. Like the way they show up, it's not, and I've worked really, really hard to cultivate an environment that is super positive. And, we have some guidelines that are like, hey, no hard truths. Those don't belong to us. Like, because I'm a true believer that you don't know a person by their paragraph that they post. And so for you to be like, You need to be doing this, this, and this," like, we don't know everything that's going on behind these words. We don't know their mental health. We don't know their relationship, what's going on in their relationships. And just because something worked for us doesn't mean it's gonna translate over for them. We can hope that it will, and that's the whole reason that we share our experience and we share what was helpful for us. But for us to go to somebody and be like, "You need to do it this way," has never resonated with me,
Mm-mm.
ever. And so, like, with the Broke Girl Society, it was very, very important for me that, hey, we don't do that. Like, if you there are some people who resonate better with somebody who tells them, "You need to do it like this, and you need to quit doing this." And there are those people who need that. Um, but I would say a majority of people don't. A majority of people need compassion, understanding, and they need to hear your story. They need to
Mm.
hear what worked for you. And then maybe they can be like, well, maybe that'll work for me and I'm going to try it. Um, but I definitely feel like we need to show up with compassion first and foremost, kindness, like those types of things. And so I would say for me, the biggest thing that I've seen in the BGS this year and really every year since I started is the way that women are showing up for each other. And it's like by the time I'm like, "Oh, go to respond to a post," and it's like somebody's already said it, exactly what I would have said, or somebody
Yeah.
has shown up in a way that I can't add anything to it. That isn't just you know what I mean? That isn't just repeating what somebody else said.
Mm.
Um, and I think that that's my proudest moment. I really
Yeah.
when I can't even respond to a post because somebody has already said it better than I would have said it, there isn't a prouder moment than that, to know that you created a space that helped encourage that.
And it truly is awesome, and I've seen it firsthand because, when I launched the Modern Meeting, in July, it's basically turned into, Broke Girl Society Northeast. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had a Modern Meeting where there weren't more women than men in the room. And, people like Gail and Deanna and some of these women that came over, they're just amazing. But also, and I don't think I'm saying anything out of school, but like, sometimes they'll be talking about a situation on some of these Zoom meetings where someone crossed that line, like you said, or they're using statements that they shouldn't or whatever. And it's never a BGS meeting. It's always like a different meeting. And they'll be like, oh, it doesn't fly at BGS. Like BGS is, you know what I mean? Like you've created this amazing, safe space. And that is like, that's what all of us need, man, woman, child. Like we need a safe space, right? We need a safe space where we can let out whatever is in our hearts, but also, like you said, listen to everybody else's. And, I can remember if you talked to me 7 months ago and you said this exact same thing, my follow up would have been, okay, Christina, but I've been where this person is. I know what they're going through and I know exactly what they need. So why can't I tell them that? And it's like, because you can't, because even though you may know, and even though you may be right exactly what they need, you could give them the recipe, you could give them the blueprint. They need to get it themselves, right? Like
Yep.
we need to use that motivational interviewing and we need to let them spill their stuff and let them come up with it themselves. And then maybe we say, you know what, that's a great idea. Or you know what about this? Right? Like
Yep.
it's just that approach. And I love the fact that now, I still have a long way to go, both in my recovery and also how I help others. But man, do I feel like I am so much more equipped to help people now when if you talked to me 7, 8 months ago, I thought I was good to go, right? I got this podcast that's going pretty good, and everyone says that my stories are great, and the podcast resonates with them. Blah blah blah. Little did I know that I wasn't coming at it with the right approach.
Well, and I think that what you just said is like I've got a lot of recovery ahead of me. I've got a lot of learning ahead of me because I think that that's what you want to hear from somebody in recovery. You don't want to
Yeah,
hear from somebody in recovery that, "Hey, I've got it. I've got it. Like, I'm good." Because to me it's like, "Well, what does that mean?"
yeah,
Like, what does that mean that you're good? Like, I want to know exactly what that means. Does that mean that you've got a system that's just working and this is all you're going to do, or does it mean that you're doing something every day for your recovery? Like, explain that to me. But I think even as people, as podcasters and meeting hosts and group facilitators, like if I were to say I've got all this figured out right now, like that would be so wrong. Like,
yeah,
because I don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. And I say this in a way because I am so proud of the BGS, but that doesn't mean that I always show up in the right way. That doesn't mean that I always respond to somebody's post in the right way. It really just depends on like, how my day is going, right? Like so it's unrealistic that I'm always going to show up and say the right things and do the right things. And but I think the whole point for me is that my intentions are always to keep this space safe, and I lean into those intentions, but my my intentions and my goals and all of those things are always going to be my recovery first. Like I have to focus on what I need to do to stay well and to stay on the path of healing and continuous growing, right? I'm not just locked in like I'm good. I've learned everything I need to learn, right? Like no. Each person coming in with their story, each podcast episode that I do, like I learn something more. I expand my whole thoughts on recovery even more. Each talk that I do, I learn something. Each conference I go to. And for me, that's yeah, it has this give and take, right? Like I'm doing all this traveling and trying to raise more awareness that women in gambling need more resources and we need more conversation. And that pulls me away from the BGS a little bit. But it also brings me this knowledge so when I am able to just focus and be more available, that I bring that into the space, which then continues the evolving, right? So it's never going to be like done. It's never going to be like this is it, right?
yeah.
With myself or hopefully with you. And it's just like there's always more to learn. There's always, resources coming and so I think it's just really important to keep looking ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse. Forget about recovery, just in life, like anyone who thinks they know it all and they're just done learning or done evolving. I mean, that's just like, yeah, I
And you
I
have to
don't.
you were talking with people, you said, "Hey, I know what's gonna work," right?
Right,
Because it
right.
worked for me. But here's the thing, and this is a really hard lesson that I learned early on. I can't want somebody's recovery more for them than they want for themselves.
Of course.
And I think that that's one of the hardest hardest things in recovery because I see somebody and I'm like, I want them to be happy. I want
Mm,
them to feel better and I want to do anything I can to do that. And, but there's still boundaries that I have to put in place. I can't take their call at 10 o'clock at night
mm,
because then that pulls from my own right? I have to put these boundaries out and I have to do all these things. And it's yeah, it's never easy, is I guess is
yeah.
what I'm trying to say, and I don't know where I'm really going with that, but it's like,
No, but
I can want somebody's recovery more for them than oftentimes they want for themselves, or maybe they're just still trying to figure it out, um, and that can be really, really hard, or you've got somebody who's really trying, but you have to keep those boundaries in place so that you don't deplete yourself. I think that that's more of what I was trying, and so it's always kind of this, you know
yeah. Well, you made me think of so and once again, I wanna ask you, like this kinda ties into what I wanna ask you next, which is, what's a conversation that we're not having now that we need to have in 2026? But before I ask you that, what do you think of the idea or what so when we're on the modern meeting, or if I'm sitting in a GA meeting or wherever, I'm at the point now where I can listen to someone share, and I can 9 out of 10 times, I can basically tell if they have not if, but I can tell where the recovery is at. And I can not usually, I mean, it's almost all the time. I can tell if they're not in like, if they're I don't wanna say full of shit, but if they haven't had any meaningful conversations with anyone. And I think that is one of somehow in 2026, we need to gently let these people know that, "Hey, love that you're in this meeting, but tell me about what you've done so far." And then you hear, "Oh, so haven't done much. Let's get something into your schedule where you can actually start hearing some things that you need to hear." Ha Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think you're kind of talking about, like, those hard truths, right? Where how do
Yeah,
you get them in a place where they can safely hear those hard truths?
right.
Like, "Hey, doesn't sound like you're doing much to move forward in your recovery. It sounds like you're either stuck or maybe reverting back to those patterns again." And again, that's always a tough space, right? Because people come
Right.
to meetings to kind of hear what they need to hear, to um, hear about what's going on in other people's lives and recovery. And, there's a lot of reasons why we do meetings for our own recovery and to show up for other people and help them through their recovery. But I think for me, hard truths belong with the people who are working with us, who talk to us every day, who know more about our lives than we share in a Facebook group or a meeting sometimes. So I think if there's somebody that you're really wanting to engage that way with, it's building that relationship outside of the meeting, outside of
Mm.
the group post, and kind of if they're willing, if they're not willing, then that goes to show that you want more for their recovery than they do
Which
for themselves. And so
right.
it really is kind of if you see somebody that you're like, I want to help guide them, I want to help, you've got to build that relationship outside of those meetings. And
Mm,
um so that you can be in a place to do that. You can better understand where they're coming from. But then also, again, going back to what I said, like, you have to keep those boundaries in place. You have to understand whether they're ready or not and whether you're wanting more for their recovery than they're ready for right now. And I think that again that goes to just show that's when you're facilitating a meeting or when you're in this space and kind of doing it in the way that like you and I do it or other leaders of their communities do it. Um it comes to this piece where you want everybody that's coming in, you want to be able to say the right things that just help spark them in their own journey. And when that doesn't happen, I struggle with it a little bit. I'm like, is it
mm,
me? Am I not saying the right things? Am I not engaging enough or am I not connecting with them? And that again was a lot of the struggle that I had early on. And then I just really got to be of that understanding of I'm not always going to show up the right way. But even if I did show up the right way, are they showing up in the way that's going to receive it? And I think in those moments, I was making it more about me
Mm,
and less about the person showing up. Like I was like, oh, am I not doing it this way? Am I not doing this? And internal, and that's always good to be reflective and being like, okay, what belongs to me or what belongs to them. Um, but I think it really is kind of, are they showing up? Are they willing?
right,
And let's just pull this in before we get into your other question. Let's pull this into a sponsorship question, right? One of the most asked questions I get by far, and there's two that I get that all the time, but one of the most asked questions is, how do I get a sponsor? And nobody ever likes my answer. I will give them the answer and they'll be like, okay. Um, because here's the truth of it, and it kind of all ties into this, is it's a twofold question. So you want a sponsor, right? But are you going to meetings? Are you building those relationships outside of the meetings? Are you going to in-person GA meetings? Are you and sponsorship really is a Gamblers Anonymous thing. It's part of their program, part of 12-step community. So a lot of 12 steps communities have the sponsor sponsee relationship. But if you're not in a 12-step program, you might find a mentor or somebody to help guide you, but it may look different. But if you want a sponsor, one, you need to be involved in GA more than anything. You need to probably not need to, like, I mean, probably, like, you need to build relationships within those communities. You need to make friends with women in the community, right? So if you I'm one of those that believe if you're going to have a sponsor or mentor, it needs to probably be the same sex. Just because there's a lot of differences in women versus men in recovery. And if you've had something that's opposite, great. More power to you. Glad that that works. But I would say just in general, it needs to be, and in the GA program, they would say it needs to be male, male, female, female,
yeah,
or however you identify. But I think nobody likes the answer to this. Like you have to go to
I
these
love that
meetings.
answer.
And if you're a sponsor or you're looking to sponsor or mentor somebody, like this is the other side of that question. Somebody asks me, what do I look for in a sponsee? I look for somebody showing up for themselves because it is a huge time commitment for both people to build this relationship. I want to see them showing up to meetings regularly. The sponsees that I have, I watch them for months. I watch them come to the meetings every Sunday or whatever meetings I was hosting. I watched them post in the group and how they were showing up for themselves, how they were taking accountability. I watched them doing the work. And that told me that no matter what was going on with them, they're still showing up for themselves, which means they're going to show up for their recovery. That means I can commit that time to them. Um, and we're going to work on this together. And I have had long-term relationships with my sponsees because we build these relationships, right? Um, and so that is a core piece of that relationship. You can't come in day one and be like, I need a sponsor to hold my hand through this.
Yeah,
Like, you need to show up for yourself first. And you can find guidance in communities, you can find guidance in meetings, and you can lean in on that guidance as you're building your recovery. But you got to show up for yourself first.
yeah.
That's the main answer. You have to show
I
up for yourself repeatedly first.
I literally love every single word you just said. And two things. Number one, I understand that people are going to be like, he was just saying that he agrees with her that you can't want recovery more than someone else. And then he was just saying how he wants to talk to people after. No, this is what I'm saying. Christina just said the word need like 50 times. So I think we just proved that like there are some things that you do need to do. You need to show up for yourself. You need to do this with someone else. You cannot recover on your own. So there are some you need things. And then also like uh, the specific type of person I'm talking about, it's the person who comes into that meeting and says that they have 90 some says that they have 35 days. And then like the next sentence out of their mouth is like, I can't wait to get to a year. Boom, red flag. I know that that person doesn't get it, right? Like, and so that doesn't mean that when I share, I'm gonna crosstalk across the table. Of course not. But yeah, I have that. I want to talk to that person after the meeting. Say, hey, good to see you. So explain to me what what about this whole day at a time thing? You know what I mean? Like, tell me, like just because I think everyone deserves to at least have like the right foundation. Like to let someone come into a meeting and say things that are universally not aligned with recovery, and we just keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. I think there needs to be a little more transparency, a little more accountability. That's all I'm saying. Is that fair?
Let me dive into this a little bit with you
Yes,
though.
yes, please,
Okay,
please,
let me
please.
dive into this with you a little bit because
Yeah.
and I don't know whether you'll like this or not, but
Oh, I'm
when
sure it's yeah.
I remember being 35 days and thinking, "Man, I wanna get to a year." And it wasn't and I'm just taking myself back to that mindset, right? That
Mhm.
instant, right? And I was part of the GA program for the first year of my recovery, and it was a very pivotal thing for me. It gave me something to look forward to. But I remember just like when we'd sit in our meetings and they'd be like, if you have 6 months or 9 months or whatever, raise your hand. And I just remember just sitting there like, I can't wait. I can't wait to get to that next mile mark. And for me, that gave me a goal, right? Again, we're talking about those goals, those things. But I think both things can be true. I think you can be like, man, there's something about a year that feels really good. Like I'm going to be a year away from this and things are going to be better, right? Because you're seeing people who have that time and their life is getting better. And when you're in those early recoveries, that's what you want. You want to see that somebody's life is better at a year or 2 years or whatever. So I think both can be true. I think you can be focusing on today and saying, I'm not going to place a bet today, but you can also set those long term goals, right? A year is a long term goal. A small goal or short term goal would be, I'm not going to gamble today. Long term goal, I can't wait till I get to that year. But I'm saying this from my own personal context. I'm not saying this from your context in a
No, and
meeting.
I agree with you because I can remember, once I hit 9, 10 months and at the end of every meeting they say, anyone with a year or more, please raise your hand. I can remember being like, oh, I can't wait for that. So that's a bad example what I gave. I guess all I'm saying is that, you know, when you know it when you hear it, right? You know when you hear someone saying something and you just say, oof, that person is struggling, or that person needs to they need to talk to someone, or they need to, they or sometimes it's not coming from a place of overconfidence. Maybe someone is just really down in the dumps and they're really just beating themselves up, yet they've been coming to the meetings every week, right? So I just think that in 2026, to answer my own question, I think that we need to check in with each other more. It sounds like what a lot of the BGS is doing, right? Like showing up for each other. I think that if you set foot in a 12-step meeting, or if you set foot in any setting where you're talking to someone else in recovery, don't just take that stance of neutrality and say it's their path. It's their, like I just think that it's okay. And trust me, I know people in my life and people in, my GA meeting that I haven't been to in a while, they're thinking, this is why I stopped going to that meeting, because I kind of got to that point where I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I fit in that room anymore, because pretty much of this reason. And I truly think in my heart of hearts that we can help break the stigma. We can help get that number higher of people that enter recovery and don't relapse if we show up for each other more, and if we're honest with each other. And obviously all this goes without saying, like, going with the right approach, with the right tone, with the right use of words. Um, you know, am I gonna do it? I don't know, because I don't know if I'm capable of doing it. I think my tone is just too excitable, but I hope people who are listening to this and they might have someone in their life who they know that like, you know, might benefit from a one-on-one conversation or a cup of coffee after a meeting. I hope they do that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that we can encourage people to reach out more.
Yeah.
Again, though, again, it's kind of like that side of it. Like we want people like you're almost 4 years, I'm almost 5 years in recovery. Our lives look different than they did all those years ago.
Mm.
And we want that for everybody we interact with, right? Who come into the rooms, who come into the meetings, who come on the podcast and they share their story. And, for those people that are still in the midst of the struggle, who come to the meetings and aren't ready to talk. And we want to engage them. We want to encourage them to lean into the community and have that support. But again, it really the person has to do it. And
Yeah.
this isn't like what I said where hard truths and you need to do this and you need to do this. When I'm saying that, I'm just saying these are the things that get you closer and you get to decide how you put all the tools in your tool belt. You get to decide
Yeah.
what those resources look like. You get to decide your path and it's ultimately up to you, the person listening, myself, you. Um it's ultimately up to us to reach those goals, to do the work, to show up, to make those connections so that we get a sponsor or a mentor. That it feels so overwhelming in the early days. Like, where do I start? What do I do? I'm too scared to talk. I'm not feeling comfortable in my own skin. My life is literally burning down around me. And now you're wanting me to do more work. I'm exhausted. I'm overloaded. I get that, which is why we build these communities and have these meetings so you can just come and each story you hear, you feel more confident that you can make a small choice that gets you to the next step or gets you closer to those goals. Um, but at the end of the day, there's nothing we can do that's going to turn that switch for you. Like
For sure.
that all has to be on you, but also we have to know what's in our control, right? And all that's in our control is how we show up and how
Yeah.
we engage and how we live by example, right? My living amends is to do this work. This is my living amends to myself and to the harm that I caused during my gambling is to show up and do this work and that's it. That's all that's in my control. I can't control how many people come to my meetings. I can't control what they do when they sign off. I can't control what they do when they leave their house and they're driving and have their phones. I can't control any of that. All I can do is just hope that I show up for them in a way that they resonate with, in a way that helps them move forward. And I think that you've been doing the modern meeting for a year now?
No, like 6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing the podcast?
Like, a little over a year.
Okay. So it's I'm almost 5 years into doing well, 4 and a half into doing the podcast and 4 into hosting the community and there's been a lot of ups and downs with it all, right? A lot of
Mm.
figuring out how to do it, what to do, and I think I've just settled on, and this is kind of ties into you're going to do this podcast, right? It's a visual podcast. And you go in and you do this and um you just have to get comfortable with how you're showing up. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You just have to be like, this is me. I'm an imperfect human
Mm.
trying my best. And this is it. And
Yeah.
that authenticity just in that moment is what I think people respond to. And
Totally.
that's what gives people motivation.
Yeah. I just think of, I think of like, especially like the last 5 or 6 years of my 20 years of gambling when I look back, like I was surrounded by enablers and surrounded by people that gambled with me and went to the casino with me who told me like, "Ah, yeah, you might wanna cut it back, but you'll be fine. Just do this, just do that." Nobody, with the exception of my immediate family, ever, like pointed anything out to me from my gambling, and I just think that, when I think of my early days in recovery, once I said, "I'm gonna go to a meeting," I went in there with just this humility and this, if I'm being honest, like, desperation of, like, "Just give me the info, like, what do I need to do?" And I thank God that I walked into some really good meetings with some really great people with a lot of great recovery, and, I just think of the people that take that same first step that I did, but they don't have the same luxury. They might not even have a meeting within a few hours of where they live, right? And then they go to a Zoom meeting and they it doesn't resonate with them for whatever reason. So, but it's you nailed it on the head. The bottom line is we do the best we can and we show up for who we show up for. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean it's speaking of they need to do it for themselves. A main reason why people are struggling, it's this S word, this word that we hear all the time, stigma. In 2026, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get the balance to shift for no one has a problem saying I'm going to rehab for drugs or alcohol, but if it's gambling, oh yeah, I don't want to tell anybody that. Then they think I'm bad with money or they think they think I'm a loser.
Unreliable,
Yeah.
not
W-
responsible.
What's the plan, Christina? Tell me. What are we
We're gonna
doing?
keep doing what we're doing. We're gonna keep talking about it. We're gonna keep, doing these things that take us out of our comfort zone, right? Like going
Mm,
and filming something. Like I did that this year a couple of times. The first time was when I went to Honduras to do this movie that will be coming out. It'd be myself and some other people, doing, but it's all on camera and I'm super self-conscious about it. And then another one which just got released and I did I read had written a letter to my addiction on my podcast, and then there was another community that in
it,
Colorado.
and if you guys haven't watched or listened to that, please, it's on the YouTube channel, right? And it's on like your podcast.
Yeah, yeah, it's
It's
on both.
it's awesome. Bring a box of tissues. It's awesome. But yeah, continue.
And so then I worked with a group in Colorado for the Colorado, Coalition on Problem Gambling. They had this kind of joint thing, and I went and recorded an actual video of me reading my letter, and it's all on video, and I remember just like, oh, like, being so hard on how I looked or whatever, and I was just really missing the point of, like, what this message like, I've gotten so many responses, like, they played it at the Problem Gambling Conference in Colorado, they played it for everybody in the audience, and I just happened to, like, check my email, I don't know, sometime midday, and I had all these, like, comments and emails and then,
Hell
like,
yeah.
LinkedIn and all these things, and it was just like, I'm sitting here crying, we just watched this video, and then I got so many responses from the podcast and, like, those types of things, and I think it's, again, things that take us out of our comfort zone, but the importance of the work of, like,
Mhm.
how people are hearing about it, and I've had the opportunity and I feel like this whole episode is just like, I've done this and I've done this, and that's never what my intention, but I think it's just, like, goes to show, like, how busy this work is but how important it is to do exactly that, to break the stigma. I never wanted to be a face of women in gambling. Like, there's
Too late.
and that was never, ever, ever what I set out to do, but it's just like each time I started to do something, I was like, "Well, okay, why isn't this being done? Alright." And even now, I joke because I feel like I talk about hormones so much, and I do, um, but it is because it's another chapter of my life that I'm experiencing, and there's still no conversation around it.
Mm.
And so I think for me and I think our closing question is gonna be like, what do we hope for 2026? For me, it's just going to be furthering the conversation, right? Not
Mm.
only about women in gambling, but like, what are we not talking about women in addiction in general? Hormones. And it takes me experiencing something like hey, I struggled with gambling addiction and I came into the space and I wasn't hearing my voice represented. It would have been a completely different thing had I come into the space and there was five podcasts about women and gambling. Like, right? Christina Cook and the Broke Girl Society wouldn't exist
Mm,
because there was somebody else filling that space, right? And even when I get people that reach out to me and they're like, I want to start a podcast, I'm like, all right, let's do this.
yeah.
Here's this $34 mic that I started with. Like, this was fantastic. Riverside is a fantastic platform. Like, let's do this, right? Because how long am I going to be relevant in this space? I want more
Well,
voices in the space doing the same thing. And that's why I kind of said at the beginning of the episode, it's always going to be about collaboration over competition. There's just not enough voices, there's not enough things going on.
not even close. Yeah.
But even when we're talking about this, like, I'm seeing this huge lack of conversation around women and hormones and addiction and recovery. Like,
Hmm.
why? Why are we not talking about this in recovery? Because when you're looking at the difference between men and women, right? Men don't struggle with the hormonal craziness that women do throughout different phases of their lives. And yes, you guys do have hormonal ups and downs, but if we were to put it on line by line chart, women would be like this and men would probably be more like this, right? Um and so it's like, why would you lump all of us in a box and be like, this is how you recover when where there's so many different things. So it's like each time I get to a space in my life, dealing with a challenge, I don't know what happened to me because I was never like this growing up. I was always the quiet person in the background, always. Never felt comfortable in my skin, never felt comfortable. I think that's why addiction felt more comfortable for me. It was
Mm,
another thing that I could hide in, right?
yeah.
But coming out of addiction and not hiding from anything, like, changed all that for me. And so now it's like each time I come up with a challenge of like, why are we not talking about this? Then I'm like, well, I guess I will. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I don't know where that comes from. And
Well,
I
yeah,
just don't know.
and it's because, we're not special, right? Like, if we
No.
are going through something, guess what? That means a lot of other people are also
Yeah,
going through that, and
exactly.
if no one's talking about it, yeah, I'll be the one. Let's do it. Fuck it. Like, yeah. So, yeah, no, I love it. So speaking of, you said the last thing we wanna talk about is kinda, so what are we gonna do? Like, what what, um what are we looking for, to accomplish in 2026? And we were talking before we hit record, speaking of uncomfortable truths to get out there. But I told you, I said, I'm uh I'm ready to. Can you just say it? I don't want to say
Yeah.
what I said.
So before we got started, and this is a great closer because this is like I feel like you've been the
Mm.
podcaster in this episode because you're just like nailing me with these questions, and I'm like, so I'm really excited to kind of take which I've been fine with, honestly, but I'm really excited to take the reins on this one. But we were talking about kind of 2026 goals, right? And because we're friends and we work together, like you're like, I don't know if I really want to talk about this on the podcast because I want to maybe get back out there in the dating world, right? And I think this is a really interesting conversation. And you're like, I don't really want to talk about it on the podcast. And I'm like, why? Because this is a lot of people listening might be kind of thinking the same thing, like,
Yeah,
especially if they've got some recovery under them. I think this is a huge topic. How do you date in recovery? Like, how do you even talk about that you're a person in recovery, right? How do you, and I'm going to share a story about when I started dating. So when I first entered recovery, I was married. And that marriage shouldn't have happened. I was struggling within my marriage. I was struggling with addiction. We were struggling with addiction, and our addictions were enabling each other's addictions. And when I started recovery, like, I was hiding it from him, like, because I was trying to figure it out. I wanted to get my head around what was going on with me so that I could have a clear answer to talk to him about it. Like, I wanted to come to him with a clear head and be like, this is what we're doing. This is why your debit card declined all the time and all these things. And I just remember when I first told him about what I'd been going through, I mean, this is just going to sum it up. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're not struggling with a gambling addiction. You're just bad with money. And I knew in that moment, like, this wasn't gonna work, right? And
Mm.
I think too, it just kind of showed him what he needed to do, right? So as I was getting in recovery, just uncovered a lot of insecurities, a lot of just dysfunction, blah, blah, blah. So my therapist I was working with at the time to get me to this point to even be able to talk to him, she was like, I just don't want you to make any big decisions in the first year of recovery. Like, I want you to focus on these goals. I want you to get yourself in a better space mentally. And so the reason why I'm sharing this is because the first year of your recovery needs to be not about big changes unless you're in a relationship that has to change. I'm not telling you what to do, but for me this is my thoughts on it is you need to work on you. You need to get all that stuff in order, get all, do the work, right? And so when that year came up, like I had already got an apartment. Like I already knew like this was happening. So year came up and then I spent some time just in that year, even though I was still married, we weren't really like together. And so I'd done a lot of work on myself, got in my apartment, and then I found myself kind of, I'm a little like maybe I want to get myself back out there. It'd been really a long time since I felt like I was in a good place and a good relationship. And I met my now partner Dustin. And I remember when I was like on the dating apps, and I know this is like a long version, sorry,
No,
but
no,
it
you're
just
good.
feels like I have to
Less time that I have to talk about it. Keep going.
I just had to have to fill in all these little boxes. But when I was
Is
on
that how
there,
you guys met on the apps?
um, no, but when I was on the apps,
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at the profiles or whatever, and everybody, because I'm in Oklahoma and there's nothing really to do in Oklahoma but gamble because it's on every corner. They were like, "We can go to the casino for date night." And like I just noticed that so many of them were just like, "I like to go to the casino." It's either that or they're holding a fish. They're holding a fish.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Which I like to fish, but I just don't want to see that picture in your profiles, okay,
Right.
Adam? No fishing profiles."
I don't have any game
It's a
fish.
red flag. It's a
Yeah.
red flag, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So, and don't put, "Hey, I like to gamble." Um, but it was still kind of one of those things where I was having to kind of figure that out. But anyway, then I met Dustin and but I was still really like I didn't want to give him my name because at this time I'd already been doing the podcast and you could Google my name and there was all this stuff and about all the work that I was doing even then. And I just didn't want to give him like my last name or whatever. And he so when I finally was like, okay, this is I'm a person in recovery. This is what I've struggled with. And this is what I'm doing now. And I was like, I'm just really nervous to tell you that. Because I really liked him. He's such a great guy. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, that's the most awful thing I've heard. Like, you've had this awful experience and now you're using it to help others. Like, this is terrible." And I knew in that moment he was the one for me. Like,
Mm.
because of the way that he showed up for me in that moment, but it was the most uncomfortable moment of like having to share that I'm a person in recovery. And because I think part of my internal issues that I had to work on was the fear of abandonment. And that kind of showed up in that moment of like, what if he doesn't want anything to do with me? He's fantastic and he's handsome and, you know, but he showed up for me
Yeah.
and found out that he was sober as well from alcohol. And so he understood kind of what I was going through. And here we are, this
It's
happy little
amazing.
family and our cute little home and our little animals. And so all that to say, and I hope that that gives you some is I think anytime like I see posts of like, how do you tell somebody that you're a person in recovery? It's like, you just do it. You do it from the beginning. You do it from the start because you don't want to start building something with somebody and then like you tell them and like your core values are off or whatever. Like maybe there's somebody that likes to go to the casino a couple times a year, or likes to cruise and go to the casinos. Like those are all going to be future conflict. So it's like for me, it's rip the band-aid off pretty early. Like you don't have to let them know the first date, but it needs to be in those early days of like, I'm a person in recovery. My recovery is very important, especially as much as you do in recovery, right?
Mm.
You podcast meetings, like everything you do revolves around this work
Mm.
and your own recovery. And they have to understand. that priority. Like, your recovery's gotta come first so that everything else works.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't been my issue as far as like, disclosing to, the people I've dated in the last almost 4 years in recovery. I think for me over the holidays, and once again, to your earlier point that I guess the reason to have this conversation is because, not to say like, "Hey, ladies," but it's the conversation because a lot of people are in my shoes, you know what I mean?
"Hey,
And,
ladies, I'm
I
available."
I was thinking of like this is like a really depressing thought, but it is what it is. Like I was thinking that over the course of my life, I don't think I've ever been in a relationship during Christmas where it was long enough where like I went to that person's Christmas or they came to mine, which is like, that how does that not make you as a 42-year-old man think like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like, how has that never happened? And yeah, I think the thing that the reason that I really in 2026, like I just I have this overwhelming desire because I feel like I feel like I'm just I used to say in recovery, I mean, I'm sorry, I used to say in active addiction, like, I'm a catch or, I'm this, I'm that, when I was a fucking train wreck, right? I'm not gonna make the same mistake and say that I'm a catch, but all I know is that like I have a lot more to give to someone now. And I have a life that I'm proud of that I want to share with somebody. And I think for the last few years, maybe the last couple years, I've kind of been in denial of that, where I'm just like, hey, when it happens, which I still believe that. But I guess like over the holidays, I just kind of, uh, and it might have something to do with like the whole holidays thing and, going to events where it's you and a bunch of couples and their kids.
You're feeling the
And
pull, right? You're feeling like something's missing and this is what's
yeah,
missing and I'm
yeah,
ready to look for that. And I think too it's like again, early recovery, like you can it, it's kind of always going to be a struggle, right? You're working on you and I think I look at my past relationships before I entered recovery, like I've I've never been in like super healthy relationships because I always felt like I was the fixer. Like I had to bring on people and fix him, and I don't know if that's, like, egotistical or whatever, but I just feel like I've always been a nurturer and a fixer, and I just always connected with people who needed more from me than they were able to give themselves, and recovery changed all that for me. It made me realize, like, how much I needed to be solid for me,
yeah,
and it made me realize how much I needed somebody to be solid for themselves and, like, what an actual partnership looks like, and I think when you're probably looking at your relationships in those types of ways, like kind of looking at how those relationships were and that you always learn something from them, right? You learn
mm,
and we were kind of talking to your last relationship and how you kind of um how that ended and how hard it was, but yet your recovery stayed solid, which says a
yeah,
lot about the work that you're doing for yourself. But I think when we the more we do for ourselves, it like attracts that kind of version of somebody else. And
for sure.
so I think for 2026, and this has been a really long episode, but I think for 2026, I hope that you meet that person.
Yeah.
And, I
She's
hope that they show up.
she's around somewhere. We'll figure it out. I mean, I think that I think I've realized, especially over this last year, that no matter how happy I am, I I mean, obviously, well, I guess it's not obvious, but to me, I've realized obviously I would be even happier with someone,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's time. It's time for me to get out of that funk and because I sit here saying when it happens, when she comes into my life and it's like, okay, well, you work, you do the podcast, and when's the last time you like went out, like I swipe on the apps, but I mean, it's just like, that's a nightmare, those apps, but no, yeah, so we'll, that's definitely one of my, not to keep this, going, but, like, what is your like, clear your mind, like, 2026, like, what's your top, like, goal or
Uh, for my I don't know, like, I haven't really thought about like, my short-term goals are to get back into the routine of, coming out of the holidays and coming out of this kind of this surgery, and, my short-term goals are to kind of get back in a routine, get back into the gym. I just got the release last week, so I can get back into the gym,
mm,
um, and kind of do that. But as far as, like, with the work that I'm already doing, I'm just gonna keep talking, keep
yeah,
putting episodes out, keep finding those conversations that need to be had. And I think my goal is at every conference that I do to really highlight the things that we aren't talking about. And
yeah,
I feel like even though we've made such progress in the last few years around just broadening the conversation, having more conversations around gambling, I've seen, different shifts and different things. There's still a lot of work to do that I feel that I can put some more focus on,
mm,
like I get a lot of media requests about like partners of sports bettors, you know?
mm,
And I know that I've talked about this before, but I just got one last week, and I want to change that narrative so much. Like, yes, partners of sports bettors need to have that conversation. They need to understand what resources are available to them if they're experiencing any kind of harm from their partner's gambling. But I think that just anybody, right? If
sure,
anyone's experiencing harm from their loved one's gambling, like that conversation needs to be had. Why does it need to be such a small subset? Because that's the problem that everybody's glamorizing. And that's the thing for me is like we're glamorizing the problem in a way, like through the media outlets around the sports betting, but we're not glamorizing the solutions. We're not glamorizing like how do we fix this? And so I think more around those kind of conversations. And to me, it's like glamorizing the sports betting and the small niche of those impacted by the sports betting, which is not a small niche. Like I say that, but when we're talking about like girlfriends of 20-year-old sports bettors, like, yeah, they're experiencing harm. But when we're looking at the broad impacts of women in gambling, it's so much bigger than just a small subset of those. And when we talk about it in that way, it kind of reduces how women are experiencing gambling harm. It reduces them to just a small affected other. And so that reduces the conversation, or it reduces the understanding that women are experiencing tremendous harm through their own gambling. Like, we don't need a man to make us gamble and cause harm. Like, stop saying that. And so for
yeah,
me, it's like I want to do more work on glamorizing the solution to the problem. And that to me is having more conversations that are more inclusive of who is having the issues. It means talking about the lack of funding. It means highlighting the resources that are available, and having those hard conversations about what changes need to be made.
mhm.
And so I think that for me, for 2026, my goal is just to continue having the conversation. So I think that's going to be my word, is conversation.
Oh, I
It's
was just
either
gonna
going to be
ask you what
that
your word
or,
is.
yeah, it's either going to
I
be that
love
or
that.
hormones, one of the two. Um,
So I'm consistency and
I think it
you're
means conversation.
your
I think it's
conversation.
going to be
I
more of
love
like,
it.
let's have the conversation, whether it's uncomfortable.
Mm,
Because like every media person that reaches out to me, they have a conversation with me. I'm like, hey,
mhm,
I appreciate that you're wanting to highlight this very, very important topic of gambling harm, but are you willing to broaden the conversation so that you can reduce some of the harm that you'll create by hyper focusing on this very, very small subset, when you could broaden that and they can be included in it, but so can other women who are experiencing harm.
Yeah.
And that goes one of 2 ways. Like, one is like, that's not really the conversation we're looking for. Bye." And then the other way is like, "Yeah, sure. Like, tell me about it."
Mm,
And it even if it doesn't completely expand the piece, it expands an understanding of the piece.
yeah.
So,
All right. Well, we hope y'all enjoyed that modern meeting and BGS audiences. We appreciate you. 2025 was a great year. Looking forward to 2026. Any parting thoughts for the listeners? Just besides keep doing it.
just keep waking up every day and making those small obtainable goals, whatever they are
Amen.
for the day. Just
Amen.
keep doing it. Keep being curious about what's going to be helpful, you know?
Yes.
Just yeah, just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Christina, you're the best. Thank you so much for coming. This was your idea, so I appreciate you. This was awesome.
Well, thanks, Adam. Always a great conversation with you. And yeah, well, I hope everyone listening, whether you're on Adam's podcast or mine, I hope that you have a fantastic New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and really looking forward to 2026 with you.
Amen. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.